Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Nedarim, Daf Lamed Daled, and we're starting about a third of the way down at Ika de Masnila B'Hai Lishna. Yesterday we learned the Mishnah that spoke about the fact that when a person is mudar hana from another person, that they're still allowed to do the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. And on the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, up until this point where we're starting now, we saw a version of the Machlokes Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi, but that was really version number one. And to briefly review those shitas, one of the shitas was that the only time that Hashavas Aveda is allowed is when nichse machzir are asurin, when the person returning is not allowed to be benefiting from the other person, al bal ha'aveda. And the other shita says that no, everything, no matter what, it's always mutter to do Hashavas Aveda. And the Gemara picks up with another version right here on Lamed Daled Amud Aleph, 8 lines down. Some say that the machlokes, the presentation of the machlokes about Hashavas Aveda is a little bit different, and it's as follows. According to the first approach, not like we learned yesterday, but one is only allowed to do the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda when the nechasim of the Baal Aveda are asr on the machzir, and even though it's possible that because the machzir, I'm holding on to this, I could have gained some money because of Pruta de Rav Yosef. Let's review, even though we learned it yesterday. Rashi, the Mefarish at the bottom, explained it beautifully on the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. But in short, if I'm involved in the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, then the rules of Osek b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah apply to me. And if that's true, then when someone knocks on my door to ask for tzedakah, I'm saying, I'm sorry, I'm actively in the process of Hashavas Aveda, on pater, and we considered that the lack of spending, the extra cash in your pocket, is considered a hana. But here the Gemara says that the reason why the chazar is allowed, even though the nechasim of the Baal Aveda are asar on that person, don't worry, the pruta de Rav Yosef is lo shchiach. Aval, this first opinion would agree that nichse machzir asurin al Baal Aveda, that if the nechasim of the machzir, the person returning, is going to be asar on the Baal Aveda, lo mahadr, he should certainly not return them. Mishum de kamahanile, that's considered a direct hana. And that's one of the approaches of the Amoraim for today. And the second approach is as follows. The mitzvah just pasha doesn't apply to me, it just leaves the object. It's very weird.
Right. I'm saying it's
very weird. But it's like any other mitzvah, you have to think about it in another frame. It's raining outside, so the mitzvah of sukkah just pasha, it's a zero, doesn't apply. It's just you just don't go in the sukkah. There's no, your lulav and esrog is not kosher, there isn't one for 100 miles. If you don't pick up a lulav and esrog, the mitzvah doesn't apply to you. Your tefillin or treif.
But it's not a one-way. It's not a. They're not on the mountains.
It's true.
It's a two-way street, and they're hurting the person by not. You have a netter against it already, but I'm saying like give it to a shaliach.
Yeah. So really, the point of blame in what you're describing is the person who is madir hana, because that person really messed up everything. Correct. It's not a din in the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda per se. You created an impossible scenario for me to get out of. So you really blame it on that's where the blame belongs. Yeah, that was the trigger of what happened. The mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda is beautiful. Everyone should always do every mitzvah that they can. You're a jerk. You created a really impossible scenario for me. You want me. Don't be upset if I don't return it now. My hands are tied behind my back. The Chad Omar, 2/3 of the way down, afilu nichse machzir asurin al Baal Aveda. Even if it were to be the case that the nechasim, my nechasim, the machzir, I'm the one who's returning the object, would be asur to you, mutter. Midi denafshe kamahadrle, because when I'm returning it, it's not even my item. It's not considered a hana. This is the machlokes for today's presentation of Rav Ami and Rav Asi. And as our Mishnah had concluded, Tnan, and this is really going to be a question, and as you can see at the very last word of the page, it ends with a kasha. So what's the Gemara's question? We had said in our Mishnah, Tnan, makom shenot lenoleh aschar tipol hana lehektish. We had said that if a person does Hashavas Aveda when it was mutter, when the act of returning was not considered to be an act of hana, but it's normal protocol in that particular locale for people to pay you for Hashavas Aveda, and they give you the $50 cash. Our Mishnah says that in such a case, that's not allowed. That money has to be tipol lehektish. It has to be tipol hana lehektish. The money has to go to something other than you. Put it in the pushka, give it to a poor person. It says hektish. I don't know if there's I don't think it means that you can't give it to a poor person. I think it just means that you can't keep it. Could be wrong, but I don't think so. And 4 lines from the bottom, the Gemara asks its question based on this line. I could understand this line. I could understand that even in a case where the Amora would hold that the nechasim of the machzir are forbidden on the person who actually owns the object, that we still return it. That's how we have a scenario where we could envision a person giving the money to hektish, because in both directions, no matter who the Isser Hana is on, the person's going to be returning the object. That makes our Mishnah logical because both options are viable. But according to the one who says that that when the nechasim of the machzir are asurin, and there are missing words here, on the Baal Aveda, that v'lo mahader, you should not return heichim etaretz makom. By the way, this is another great example of a Masechta using strange language, because heichim etaretz makom. It's a very strange wording. And what it really means is that the line in our Mishnah doesn't have any good explanation according to this, and therefore the Gemara says, Kasha, you're absolutely right. And that brings us...
What's the makom?
A makom is a reference to the line in the Mishnah that says, makom shenotlin aleha schar tipol hana. Makom, in the place. What does the word makom mean? What does the phrase makom mean? In a makom where a person does X. So that's what the reference of the word makom is. Still, it's not a normal way to frame out a Gemara. And then, as the Gemara sometimes does, it just comes out of left field. We'll come back to our stratosphere in a little bit, but on the top of Lamed Daled Amud Beis, it looks like we're learning something completely different. Amar Rava, Hayasalafon of Kikar Shel Hefker. I walk outside, I see a loaf of bread, and it's completely Hefker. No simanim, it's just Hefker. The Amar, and then when I see it, I say to myself, Kikar Zu Hektish. It's Hefker, and I made it Hektish. Very simple scenario. And then, not Lal Ochla. And then I took it and I took a bite out of it. So if I did that, then ma'al lefi kula, then my violation of me'ilah is pure. It's 100% of whatever you ate. That's going to be the fiscal punishment. It's a financial correlate. Done. What if I did the same thing? I took the kikar that was hefker and I made it hektish, and then I gave it lehorisha labana. I put it in a safety deposit box and I left it until the time that my children would get a Yerusha from me. So then nobody's eating it. It's just kind of sitting there. Let's assume that it's matzah and doesn't go bad from year to year. But you need an assumption. Something.
He didn't tell them either.
No, there's no reason. There's no reason to assume that they don't know about it. And then, what happens during that time? What me'ilah has he done during that time? Ma'al lefi tovas hanashaba. Then he has violated the isra me'ilah in as much as he's benefited from the object. What does that mean? He's able to say to the kinder, I just want to let you know, I have a little nest egg for you. I have a box of Streitz matzah sitting in the bottom left cabinet. It's been there since 1984. And nobody's eating it right now because it's for Yerusha. He's not eating it because it's for his kids. His kids can't have it because it's not Yerusha time yet. So it's just sitting there. So there, the Gemara says there's an Isser of Me'ilah. It's hektish because you were makdish it. The Isser of Me'ilah that you get is not for the food itself, but for the Hana that you get. The Hana that you get from telling your kids, I've left you a Yerusha, whatever that means in dollar form, that is your Isser Me'ilah. So it's not really on the object. It's on the way in which you've utilized and manipulated that object.
Is there any relevance to why it started the case of being something that's hefker? It seems to be relevant.
Let's learn the rest of the page, and then you can ask your question again.
If he makes it hektish, how is it having as a Yerusha?
Yeah, he did. Your question is against the whole principle of Me'ilah. How then do you ever have Me'ilah? It's a misappropriation of hektish. I misappropriated hektish and I put it as part of my kid's Yerusha. So I'm an avarian. That's what hektish is. You're misappropriating. You're right that Lemaisa doesn't work. The transactions don't work. It's not yours. You're correct. But the onesh in the Torah is that if you do Me'ilah, you're punished. You can't do that. It's like holy. I'm that way with my computer chargers. You touch my chargers, you're done for. Don't touch my computer chargers. So I bought very expensive chargers that have lifetime warranties. They don't break. I bought one for my phone and I bought one for my laptop, for my iPad, 2 of them total. My kids know, don't touch Abba's chargers. Don't know. The only person who takes my chargers is my wife. She's the only one. And I don't have a lot of latitude to stop her. So. But if I did have a little bit of latitude, I would get her own. So that's what we're talking about. It's Tolas. And of course you cannot take the food, but if you do, you're going to get a slap on the wrist, a big slap on the wrist. If they eat it, they have a full me'ilah, not a partial me'ilah. This is correct. He set them up for failure. And what's crazy is that the math, the sum of each scenario is greater than the total cost of the me'ilah.
He didn't tell them. There's no benefit. He didn't. No, but he didn't tell them that it's me'ilah.
They didn't know that it was me'ilah. Oh, I thought you mean they didn't know they were getting a Yerusha. They're still owners. They're still owners, and they'll be over me'ilah b'shogeg. Okay, but the math doesn't work. Let's say that the value of this kikar was $10 and the tovas hana was $1. So by the time both generations have utilized this food, it's $11, but the whole cost is only $10. So it's a shtickle chiddush that a little bit is not a big deal. I'm just saying it's a little unique that we're giving a slap on the wrist for the tovas hana. Oh, look at what a special abba I am. I've left you a Yerusha. And then when they eat it, it's the full $10 cost.
So if the Yorshim gave it to the base of Mikdash, what is their aim? I mean,
The good news is that they don't get me'ila. The bad news is that they were not yotze being makdish anything if that was their intent. Because let's say they made a neder, I hereby consecrate this food to the base of Mikdash. That's a zero. It's a flat line. Doesn't work at all. Now, based on this line of Rava, the Gemara says as follows. Fourth line down, Lamed Daled Lamed Beis. We're going to stop at the last line on the page. Did I get to my 11 minutes yet? I'm almost there. I got this. I can't. I could talk to Stan all day, no problem, all day. Bamine Rav Chia bar Avin me Rava. So then Rav Chia bar Avin heard this din from Rava, and he asks him a kasha. What if a person says kikari alecha? My kikar is upon you, as a neder. He makes a neder about a kikar. And then v'nasna lo b'matana. We spoke about me'ila. What about if I gave it away as a matana? So says the Gemara Mahu. Do we say kikari? It's really my kikar amar lo. And ki ise birushusehu da'aser. It's since it's mine, it's only truly mine when it's in my property. And therefore, for you to benefit from it in my property is problematic. But if I send it out of my house to you, no problem at all. Odilma alecha amar le. It's a din in the gavra, not in the chefza. It's a din in the person, in the ilave and shavise hektish. And therefore, let me read that again. Odilma alecha amar le ilave shavise hektish. It's something that you say about the person. This bread, as it relates to you, is considered hektish. Din in the chefza, din in the gavra. Again, I don't mean that in all the lumdisha ways, but in a basic distinction, and that's what the Gemara is asking. So Amar le Rava responds, Pshita de afal gab de yohav alev matana aser. Obviously, if you were makdish it and you gave it away as a matana, under all circumstances, it's going to be aser. Says the Gemara, if that's true, ela kikari alecha la'afuke mai. This language of kikari alecha, what does it mean? What then? Why was it kikari alecha? Why was it a strange? Why is it kikari? Who cares that it's yours? So maybe says the Gemara la'afuke mai. Maybe we should say lav la'afuke di ganva mine mignav. You might want to have said that we're talking about a ganav, but we really can't say that it's talking about a case of geneva, because how would we ever control that case? That's not something that we have control. That can't be what he was talking about. He wouldn't have said kikari alecha, so that if a ganav we're not talking about that case. It's not what we're talking about. So then the Gemara says, lo la'afuke di azmene Allah, that if a person was invited, what is this talking about? Take a look at the mefaresh, the last 5 lines. Dibra hamaskal lo kama la'afuke di azmene Allah. Lemechal, he was invited over to eat that food. Mehahu kikar meikara. He came over, he was invited to eat that food. V'hadar amarle, and then he said kikari alecha. Dehasam kevan de'azmene ale kanachelko kemashu yachol le'echol heimana ve'enu yachol le'osra alav. You came over to eat dinner at my house. Once you invited me over, I have rights to your food. It's rude. You invited me for dinner, and I make a shakal, and you're like, "Harei alai," that this whole thing is hektish. That's not right. So that's what the Gemara says. Is to teach us a din. And when a person is invited over, then that's really what kikari alecha means. Is to tell us to exclude that case. That in that case, when a person comes over, then that's not binding, because you can't invite someone over and have zero food to give them after the implications of the invite is that they should have food. And tomorrow, and when we start tomorrow's daf, which in Yirtzeh Hashem will be in person in this city on time, 8:45, we'll begin with a kasha and the shita of Rava, and we'll stop right here. Wishing you all a beautiful night.